heal itself. We now know that the brain is tremendously malleable. And what I try to do in this book, especially when I take up the subject of the scarecrow, is show how one can actually actualize these different forms of intelligence. Because, as I said, you can learn to do so many things with the brain that we've never really thought of before. But we're living in the time of the golden age of brain and mind research, which I and my husband, in a small way, have also been part of, over many, many years.
Right.
So, I've never met a stupid child. I've met incredibly stupid and dumb and diminishing forms of education. But if a child is learning, hands-on, sensory, rich, deeply involved in the whole process of learning. I mean, if you're going to learn how to do fractions, why not learn weaving at the same time? If you're going to learn about history, have dramatic forms of it, enact the history, If you're going to learn mathematics, also study drumming and music. I mean, we find, for example, that in the schools where they have chorals, as for example in Hungary, they're way, way ahead of everybody else in Europe and America in mathematics. I mean, we know so much about the brain, but engaging the full body, the full mind of ourselves as adults, and also as when we were children, shows that we can really remake our minds, our brains.
So by using different aspects of our body, does it actually fire up neural pathways within our brain? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's our body, it's our imagination, it's our relationships. Everything feeds the renewal of the brain. We are in a time of renaissance, a renaissance of perspective, a renaissance of the relationship between women's roles in the world, probably the biggest change in human history, by the way. It is, truly. I mean, my claim to fame is I'm one of the best traveled people who's ever lived. I've worked in 108 countries, and all over the world I see things that are never reported in the press. And one of it is the rise of women to full partnership with men in the whole domain of human affairs, with some really dreadful backlash. There's no question of it, and confusion and frustration. But the fact is that with women rising, with the emphasis on process rather than on product, on making things cohere, develop, grow, on being storied, narrative, as Dorothy is narrative and stories, compassion, going together in a team. She's not the lonely hero just off by herself. All of this is shifting the story.
And it shifts with each character that she meets, because then we move into meeting the Tin Man, and he wants a heart. And I loved your analogy here where you looked at this as the machinery replacing human beings in the turn of the century. So as we look at this, we kind of see this kind of replaying itself out now, where you see less human contact face-to-face and more social interaction and more, texting and tweeting and, voicemails and things like this. Let's talk a little bit about how that Tin Man, in wanting a heart, actually found himself having a tremendous amount of compassion.
Well, I know so many young people who have transcendental thumbs on their BlackBerries. And callous too. Sometimes I'm doing 5,000-6,000 texts a day. I personally believe this is a phase. I'll have to tell you right now. I really do.
Good.
We get obsessed with the technology before we get bored with it. How many people really spend hours and hours and hours watching television?
True.
10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was a huge amount. That's not happening anymore.
Good point.
The television industry is in big trouble because people prefer to be on the computers, interacting, texting. We're about to have these watches through which you can really do all kinds of things. And whenever you have high tech, you almost always then have a follow-up of high touch. So I think that Facebook will become face-face. I see this happening more and more and more. I find, for example, in the Facebook, so many people actually finding ways of meeting, of interacting, of doing things, of problem-solving together. And this is never talked about by the nerds who write about it. with, completely covered by screens. But because I have to live at the edges so much. As I told you, there I was, and the whole tragedy of the Boston Marathon was going on, and I saw some of it. I'm like Foster Gump, female version, and that I seem to be present at the creation, present at situations happening. It's just where I am. It's just the way my life has gone. That's why I've met so many of these extraordinary people and have been so fortunate. But the thing is, having been present to history, there is something about seeing the phenomenal shifts in history in which we are really experiencing a renaissance in perspective. We now know that we no longer just live in the universe, but the universe lives in us. We have access through all my takings of depth soundings of the psyche of thousands of people over so many years. We are actually moving into a situation of an upheaval, of rising of the spirit, of rising of a collective and radically personal, unique sensibility. I mean, this is the most interesting time in human history. Other times thought they were it. They're wrong. This is it. But how do we train ourselves for this time? A lot of leaders have been trained to be the equivalent of white males of the year 1926, have not been. The Wizard of Oz, like The Wizard of Oz, is a training movie, is a training form. It is to train us to live in the much larger reality that really requires our commitment, our love, our belief, and our action if we are going to survive this time. Otherwise, I would say that the human species is largely diminished within 200 years, if not sooner.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that gives us a lot of hope for humanity and compassion reigning again. We have, because we're dealing with a lot of the heart-centered universe, and we have a tremendous amount of people recognizing that coming from the heart, being truthful, coming from a compassionate self, coming from love is really the authentic self. And as science has shown us, the heart communicates to the body, it communicates to the brain, it communicates on so many different levels. How can we evolve through trusting our hearts, and how can we be more mindful in listening to it?
Well, part of it is just agreeing to listen to it.
Yeah.
But to listen with a certain... Remember that we are mind and heart and spirit. We are all these things. We are not one part separated from the other. So we can listen to the heart and feel its beating. All right, let me give you an exercise to do this. I don't think it's in the book. I would like you and everybody else who's listening in to think heartfully about somebody they know. And just send waves of heartful resonance, heartful acceptance, heartful joy, love to this other person. Okay? Everybody's doing that now.
Yes.
And now in your heart, just imagine that your heart is asking them to send it the same kind of heartful connection to two others. And then they to two others, and they to two others, they to the others, they to the others. And I would say within about 10 seconds, the whole world is connected, quite literally. The kind of algorithm of love. And then I want you to send a heartful connection to some creature, animal, cat, dog, whatever, horse. And in your heartful mind, because these are heartful beings, ask them to send to two others, and to two others, and to two others, and they to two others, and they to two others. And now all of sentient creation is connected. And now I ask you to send from our planet to two other planets, because we take it that the planets are living, and they to two others, two others, two others, two others. And now all the planets of our galaxy are connected. And now to our sun, and to the sun, the suns, and they to two others, two others. And now the 100 billion plus stars in our galaxy are connected. And now from our galaxy to the galaxies of galaxies, and to two others, until finally our whole universe, which could be composed, by the way, of as many as 1 trillion galaxies. And from our universe to the mind and heart of all being, whatever you want to call it, God, the cosmos being that is mindful and loving. And so from your heart to the mind of all being, the heart of all being, the life of all being, the cosmos, the universe filled with this incredible love, and from that loving being that is the universe, that is the God, that is the great creator, back to you, and from you and your heart to the God, and from God back to you, so that you are in this constant pum-pum, 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 where it all becomes a great rhythm of love, everything connected.
Wow. That was powerful. I felt quite a surge there. Okay. Now I have to gain composure and get back into the question.
We don't fool around here.
We don't. We don't mess around at all here. That was great, Jean. I could visualize the energy going out as I was sending the love out and watching that love from that person go out and do the universe, into the planets. It was quite incredible. Now, getting back into our human world here, we have a lot.
Our human world.
Our human world is going through such a shift and change, and such an awakening and awareness and sensitivity. And everywhere you look, everybody's searching and seeking and looking outside of themselves and trying to connect on a deeper, energetic, spiritual aspect within themselves and with God, or what, like you said, cosmos, whatever term you want to give it. Why, when we have this shift that's going on right now, that there's such a delineating factor between those who are seeking and those who are still kind of stuck in a materialism, and not really listening to their inner heart of supporting humanity, and find themselves constantly thirsty for more and more things to fill up that void within? Would you call this a timed poverty?
Well, there is definitely an impoverishment of the heart, isn't there? And there's various historical reasons for it, too. I mean, one of the main reasons being that until the 19th century, most people lived pretty much the way they had for the previous 5,000 years, with just enough or not enough, to keep their metabolism going. And then in the 19th century came all these changes and the Industrial Revolution, and people moved to the cities, and suddenly the things of matter, the mattering multiplied. There was so much more to buy, to wish, to want, to use, and so that, and so the instead of it being family centered or village centered, it became other centered. The object became without, and it was people knew themselves by the things that they could materialize, and that then led to the vast, despair and frustration in their own humanity, because they had become autistic with regard to nature and themselves, and separated. And in this great divide, they also began to lose their sense of play, of playfulness, of the comic that is at the heart of all creation, and above all, of the love that moves the sun and all the stars. And that, of course, then reverberated, and thus more and more people, especially because of the rise of women, to full partnership. Right. This is shifting everything. We have crossed the great divide of otherness. We are reaching out to each other. We are exploring our interior places, and the exploration of the interior places is giving us the fact of what is Oz in us, what is the wizard in us. So the point of my book and of the seminar I'm about to give in your part of the country, yes, next week.
Oh, where are you coming?
Where do you live?
I live in Florida, in Vero Beach on the East Coast.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. No, I'm around all over the place. I thought I was also near there.